All right, so in our last video, we took a look at using React useState, which is a React hook for managing state. This time we're going to take a look at a React hook called useEffect, which, long story short, basically allows us to execute some code as soon as a component loads. So this will come in really handy when you're prototyping and you need to go get some API data or something and load that into a component when that component renders on the page. There is a whole lot of other stuff that can happen inside that, but that's what we're going to cover. We're going to cover a little bit of interacting with some APIs. You'll probably see me stumble and create some errors and all that, but it's going to be fun because that's what this is all about, right? So before we do anything, we're going to install a new package into our project called Axios. So inside your project folder, inside terminal, you can run yarn add Axios. So hit that and let it do its thing. And then in our project, we're going to create a new folder or new file. We're going to call this people. So let's go source.components people.tsx. So we'll create that. And then I do want to take just a minute to show you the data that we'll be working with. So here at https lost data herokuapp.com/people, this is some information we're going to get back. So we've got some people from the show Lost. So we get first names and last names and their alias and an occupation, which is kind of neat and totally useless. I don't know why I spent any time building this, but I did. So whatever. Here we go. So inside our new component people, we're going to import React. We're going to import useState and useEffect from React. We added Axios to our project, so we're going to import Axios from Axios. This is not a tutorial on how to use Axios, though maybe I'll cover that later. But essentially, it's a little utility for interacting with APIs. It makes it all really clean and handy, and I love it. And that's all there is to say about that. Export const people, which is react.fc. And it's going to return. Let's think through this. So we're going to want to return a list of people. So we're going to start with, I deleted my ending closing bracket there. No, that one. Thanks. Okay. We're going to want to return a list of people. So we're going to put them in a UL. We'll give ourselves a little heading up here. So H1, lost characters. And then we'll have a UL in there that'll have some LIs in it. I don't want the LI just yet, but that's okay. So we'll start with that. Inside our app.tsx file, we need to import our people component now instead of counter wrapper. Components and people. And when we save that, we should see inside of our project lost characters. Cool. So now let's do some things with useEffect. Let's do the fun stuff. So inside our people, the first thing we need to do in this next step is to define our state. So we're going to have const, we'll say people, and set people. And that's going to be useState. And we're going to pass in an initial value of an empty array. And then we have to define useEffect. So we're going to say useEffect. We call this like a function, like a method, whatever. It accepts a function along with an array of things that it should be watching. But we're not going to go too much into that. We're going to set that to an empty array. So when useEffect runs, what do we want to have happen? Well, we want it to go to Axios, and we want it to get something from our endpoint. So lost data.herokuapp.com/people. And then we use the then method to return the response and do something with it. So we take that response and we are going to set people to response.data. Response.data is a very common convention. You'll see that 99.9% of the time, probably, I think. I don't know. That's not mathematics or actual statistics. But the last part of useEffect after we call our own function is we provide an array of things that useEffect should be watching. In this case, we leave it empty and it tells, I would love a developer to watch this seriously and be like, you're butchering everything. We leave it empty and useEffect only runs once. If we did not include this and we left it like that, what would essentially happen is that API call would run again and again and again, and then your app would crash and you'd be in all sorts of weird situations. So, comma, space, empty array. Once we have that, we're going to want to do something with it. So we're going to create a JavaScript map function, but we want to make sure initially that people is present. So we're going to say people.length is greater than 0, and then do something. So we use the double ampersands. We're going to call people.map. We're going to map them to a person variable, and we're going to use the parentheses to just return an object, some JSX. And in here, we'll render their person.firstname and person.lastname. So that'll render it. Now, if we save this, TypeScript is going to complain and moan at us because property first name does not exist on type never. This has got to be one of the most frustrating TypeScript errors in the world, because you're like, what in the world does that even mean? So we have to define what exactly we're expecting here for person. The easiest way to do this is to define an interface like we've done before. So we'll come up here, create ourselves a new interface. We're going to call this a person, and we're going to tell TypeScript what this person object looks like. So if we look at our data, we have an ID, a first name, a last name, an alias, an occupation, a city, a country, a date of birth, created at, updated at. Those are all the things that we're expecting to come back from there. So we have an ID, which is a number. I'm going to tab back and forth as we do this. We're going to have a first name, which is a string. We have a last name, which is a string. We have an alias and an occupation. Alias, string, occupation, string. We have city. Sorry, this is just so ridiculous to me. City, country, date of birth. I don't know, one night I sat around and I thought to myself, this would be a useful thing to build, or I don't know. And then we've created at and updated at. Oh, date of birth. And I think a few of these things are optional, so we should specify that they're optional, but are not all returned in the response. Date of birth, created at, string, and, oh my goodness, and updated at. So I don't think alias is returned on all of them. Where are they? I guess it is. Date of birth, 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 date of birth. I don't know. Let's see what happens. So we'll do that. And then down here in person, where are we? In our little map function here, we're going to tell it that person should be of the type person, right? And we can reference it like that. I think when we save it now, there we go. Look at that. We have a list of people that are from Lost. Oh, and we're inside that weird app class, which is why all that stuff is rendered awkwardly. But We can change that real quick because that's ugly. Let's just delete the class name. This is actually a good opportunity for me to talk about this class name. So in typical HTML, you would define a class as class, but that is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So we use class name to define class names. Side note, that should probably be referenced or mentioned somewhere at a higher level. But there we go. We have some lost characters. And that stuff is being rendered. It's being called. Where am I at? It's being called as soon as the component loads with this useEffect method. We're checking to make sure that people.length is greater than 0 before we render it. Because if we didn't, it would be empty and TypeScript would complain. So we can take a look at what that error would look like. Or maybe it won't because it's nope, it's just happening too fast. I can't imagine that's the case. Well, there you go. I still leave it in there because I like to be explicit, I guess. I don't know. But that's that. We define an interface for person. We specify the fields that we had coming from our API. We set state to an initial empty array. We called the API. We piped it into our list. And we've rendered a list of people coming from a third-party API. Cool, cool, cool. What you didn't see was I tried to do this like 4 other times, and I kept running into weird errors. So this wasn't as easy for me as it looked. But now you know, and the more you know. All right. Until next time.